safe to come out? Hi, my name is Jessica, and I'm a spiritual transformation coach. I'm here to help you connect to your intuition so you can fulfill your soul's purpose. I want to take this moment to invite you all to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. I post new videos every single week, and you'll get notified when I post a new video. I experienced a really intense spiritual awakening, and I'm here to share that story with you. It's about to get weird over here. I'm gonna be honest. My spiritual awakening was intense. And if this video doesn't resonate with you, that is okay. But if it does resonate with you, I want you to know that you're not alone. I've felt very much alone for the past 6.5 years, not being able to relate to many people when it comes to all things spiritual. So let's begin. When I was 16, I tried to take my own life. I thought that I had to live up to this idea of perfection. I thought I had to be this perfect person for everybody to love me. And when I couldn't carry that idea of perfection, I tried to take my own life. And that's when I started to rebel and go down a really, really dark path. And that led to addictions, to drugs and alcohol, to really codependent relationships, to abusive relationships, until I finally got arrested. And I was ordered to a state rehab, which was pretty much prison boot camp. At least that's how I saw it. It was a behavior modification unit, and I was to be there for 9 months locked up. When I got there, I knew that the only way I was ever going to make it out of there was to pray and to start believing in God and to really rely on the universe to guide me into the answers that I've been seeking my whole life. So up until this point, I was living in complete darkness for about 13 years of my life. I had this empty hole inside of myself, and nothing external could fill it up to make me happy. And I was told that I was depressed and I needed medication, that, I had a mental diagnosis. People just tried to tell me all of these things that were wrong with me, which meant that an external fix, a pill, could help. And nothing worked in the end. And I remember writing. That was my go-to place because nobody understood my depression. Nobody could understand the things that I was going through, why I just didn't really feel like I belonged on earth. I never really felt like I could relate to a lot of people. I always felt that I had this depth in my soul that nobody could even touch on. And so I lived very isolated, and I wrote about my own little theories on life, and I knew that there was something more to life than having a 9-to-5 job, showing up every day and barely making enough money to pay the bills, and then being a slave to your job because you need to make money to pay the bills, and being in a marriage that was unsatisfying for you, and so you go out and cheat on your husband or your wife because deep down you're really not fulfilled. I knew that there was more to just being busy in life and so caught up in what is going on in news media and culture, pop culture. And did you see that episode on TV? For the longest time, I had this longing inside to find something more in life than what everybody else was doing. I have never been one to follow the crowd. I couldn't ever relate to people who did that. I always craved really deep conversations with people, and I wanted to talk about the stars and other planets that are out there and aliens and my own theories and philosophies on life. And never really found many people that wanted to talk about that kind of stuff with me. So I lived very much alone. And when I finally got to face my demons and got sober and clean for the first time in years, I started really going through this soul-searching process and realized that the answers that I'd been seeking my entire life were being found. And I will tell you, the most profound questions were, number one, who am I? Number two, why am I here? I remember my English high school teacher had us write down the question of why I'm here. Why am I here? And I think most of the class wrote down, well, because they had to go to school and they had to graduate to go to college or something like that. But that's not what he asked me. He asked me, like, why am I here on Earth? And I dug deep, and I have no idea what I actually said. But that's always been my interpretation of people's questions. It's looking at the bigger picture and like the deep meaning and mysteries of life's biggest questions. So I decided to start praying, and the one thing that they give you in prison rehab is a Bible, and you get to read that. So I started reading that, and I started having all of these epiphanies and realizations, and realizing that I just needed to forgive everybody in my life. That I had been living my life trying to destroy myself in order to get back at people who had hurt me. And that wasn't really true to who I was. Once you took the external things away from me that I could try to make me feel whole, like once all of those things went away and I was only there to face myself and God, all of the ridiculousness just started fading and just crumbling, and my truth started to emerge from the depths of my soul. And so connecting to that truth really started to transform me. And I I started to figure out that life was like a puzzle. And all of these years in my life, I've been being chipped away. Like my soul. I felt like I was born into this world as this whole soul. And little by little, with the circumstances of the world and the people that had hurt me, and anytime I failed somebody, anytime I failed to achieve perfection, it was like a little piece of me died. It was taken from me until there was only one little piece left of my soul. And it was that one little tiny piece left of my soul that I decided to hold on to and tried to gather up the rest of the pieces that I had lost. And through this transformational process, I started going back in time. Let me try to explain this in a way that makes sense. I was obviously an adult, and the more I connected to my intuition, to the universe, to God, to the higher power, to the spirit of the heavens, whatever you want to call it, the all-loving power that exists outside of myself. Whenever I started to really put my faith in all of that, I started going backwards in time. So I was at my adult self, and then I started to face my demons at that point in time. And then once I kind of got rid of those demons, then I went back to, my college years. And then once I kind of broke free from all of those demons, then I went back into my high school years. And then once I faced all of that and forgave and gave love to my high school years, I went back to middle school, and then I went back to elementary school until I really couldn't go back any further. And I was shedding the identities of what no longer was serving me anymore. The stories that I told myself, the beliefs that I held, the emotions that I kept, the anger, the resentment, the hate, the fear, the sorrow, the self-pity, all of that crumbled because it wasn't who I really was. And so I'd shed all of these identities of my soul until I got down to my truth. And I was like this little child just crying out for help, crying out for love, and for someone to tell her it was going to be okay. And I had forgiven everybody in my life. I had written several letters out to people and, told them I forgave them. And then I had this realization that I needed to make things right with people that I had hurt. And I knew that I was going to do that. I knew that it was essential for this new spiritual journey that I was on. And when I came to that little tiny piece of soul that was left of mine, I realized that there was one more thing that needed to happen, and that was that I needed to forgive myself. Because ultimately what I've learned on my own journey through life is that I have made every single choice to either do the right thing or to do the wrong thing. And a lot of times, for many years, for 13 years, I chose to do the wrong thing because I didn't want to believe that there was a loving power that wanted something good for me. It was almost like I kept myself a prisoner. I was the only one that held myself back. I was a prisoner to the darkness. I was a slave to the darkness, and I didn't feel like I deserved anything better than that. And really what I came to realize was that I only needed to be good enough for one person, and that was for myself. And that I didn't need to compare myself to others, that as long as I was doing my best and doing the next right thing, then I was good enough. And it didn't matter what anybody else thought. It was only me putting these expectations on myself that I had to do this, or else this person wouldn't love me, this person wouldn't accept me. And it was all fading. The beliefs gone. And I got to the point where I realized that who I was nothing. Was consciousness, and the identities that I held on to died, and I experienced an ego death. And it is weird. It is weird. It felt really, really empty. And I felt like, well, I've been feeling empty for most of my life, and now I get here and I'm praying to God and I'm believing in God and I'm, allowing the universe to guide the way, and I'm nothing. I'm empty still and alone. I'm just alone. And that was part of the process. It was just part of the process of becoming new in spiritual rebirth. And that is exactly what happened. I experienced this rebirth process where I was reborn in the spirit, and I knew that I was this spiritual being having a human experience, and that I was being led. And that's when all of the synchronicities started happening, and I started manifesting things, and things that I would be thinking about, somebody would say. It really felt like for the first time I wasn't alone, and I was really starting to become really peaceful and happy. And this was probably a month and a half being locked up in this behavior modification unit. And one night I was standing in my little bunk area, and I just felt this rush of light come over me. And I was just like, what is happening? I started shaking because it was just so powerful, and I felt any darkness that was left of me just be overcome with light. And I felt so intensely happy and at peace and full of unconditional love that I just didn't know what to do with myself. So as I said, I was reading a lot of the Bible at the time, and so I wrote to my mom, and I'm like, I've been saved by Jesus Christ. This is amazing. And I was just happy. I was on cloud nine, and for the next couple of weeks, I saw through the eyes of God, and I could see people to their core, to their souls. And I started having this epiphany that we're all kind of like, how do I explain it? We're all, they're just, I don't know, maybe 20 different soul groups, right? And they're all just put into different people, like different avatars. And we can like choose our avatars before we come in, like a video game where you say, okay, I'm going to be the warrior in this life, or I'm going to be the magician, or I'm going to be the woman. I'm going to be, you know, this dude with a super amazing knife throwing skills, whatever. It's like this video game that I started seeing, and oh my God, she chose that avatar, and she's also the same soul as someone that I knew growing up. And then this person over here, oh, that's my aunt right there. And it was so crazy because I realized that I was surrounded by people that I knew. Like, it was all so familiar. And it kind of reminded me of The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy goes off into the land of Oz, and, you know, the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion and the Tin Man, they're all her family, right? Like, they were there with her through that experience. And like, anywhere I go now, I'm not alone. I'm surrounded by like my soul family, right? It was so crazy how I saw people, and I could read people and see where they were at in life, and could determine like if they were even on a soul journey, or like what soul journey are they on? Are they on the dark side? Are they on the light side? So I'd stare at people in the eyes, and I'd look at them because I'd want to read them, and I want to see if they could stare me back in the eyes. And I really started to freak people out, and it was really sad because I remember one girl started telling everybody that I was the Antichrist because I was just so full of love, and I wanted everybody to know that they were loved by God. Did I preach God to people? Yeah, maybe a little bit too much, and so that kind of freaked people out because the circumstances were I was locked up in a dorm full of women who didn't really want to be sober or down with God. So it was an interesting time, and I felt really persecuted. I felt like for the first time in my life, I was actually being 100% true to who I was. And I realized exactly why I ran away from it for so long is because people think I'm a freaking weirdo now. And I'd even call my mom and my family, and I'd tell them like what was going on, and they would just kind of look at me like, what is wrong with my child? And I thought that spiritual awakening was this place that like everybody gets to in life. And that's kind of the difference between when you're, you know, like adolescent versus you're an adult now. I believe that that was the point where you crossed over, you know, because you had the spiritual awakening, and then you became like an adult, and then you lived the rest of your life, you know, as this awakened being. And come to find out, no one was awake except for me. And I remember thinking that, holy crap. So my entire life, I'd been running away from my truth. I finally find it, and now people can't relate to me. And the more I took refuge in God and just prayed with God and isolated and wrote about my realizations and revelations, God was giving me like revelation after revelation after revelation. And I was like, I don't know what to do with all of this. They already think I'm crazy. And so I just started keeping a lot of it to myself because I really felt like there are some things spiritually that you can't tell a person who's not awake yet. Like, they're not ready to hear that. But at the same time, they're not going to hear it if their ears aren't open and ready to receive that message. Like, they're not going to. And So I really started to kind of dial back like what I was saying so that I could come off in a way that made me seem relatable, but at the same time I could not relate to the humans, is what I called them at the time. The humans, I couldn't relate to them. I didn't understand human emotion. I didn't understand why people were fighting. I didn't understand why people were so scared. That was the biggest thing. I couldn't understand for the life of me why people were so afraid of everything. And so I really started feeling alone, and it was sad, but I didn't feel rejected. It was interesting because I'd experienced this ego death, and so there wasn't a lot of like ego attachment to these things, but what I felt was I felt sad for God, because I knew that the people who rejected me were rejecting God ultimately. And that was a lot of people. But then on the other hand, there were a lot of people who would just talk to me and they'd be really curious about, me talking about God. And so I would talk to them and they were really receptive to it. And, I got out of, my prison rehab experience and really didn't know how I was gonna live my life as this spiritually transformed being, because when I was locked up, I so badly wanted to figure out what I was and what had happened to me. And so when I got out, it was all about researching and figuring out what in the heck happened and like what was I. Like, I know who I am now, I'm the spiritual being, but like, what am I? Am I some type of prophet? Am I some messenger? Am I Jesus? I did believe that I was Jesus at one point because I read the Bible and the Bible said that I'm the light of the world, and so I believe I'm Jesus. We walked hand in hand for a good while, and apparently what I had gone through, from my understanding, is a Christian mystic awakening. Waking up through Christianity. Started just doing lots of research and trying to connect to other people, trying to go to, meditation meetups and going to crystal shops and, really wanting to just continue to develop my spiritual abilities, but really wanting to find my new tribe, and hesitated to open up about spirituality, about my beliefs in God. And then I finally would, and I'd get the, can you not talk about this? It's starting to scare me. And I thought, wow, I'm all alone in this life. It was so sad to me because I wanted to just love the world and didn't know if the world was ready for me. But it was through social media that I was able to find spiritual teachers online and, a lot of YouTubers out there that had gone through similar experiences. And I knew that what I'd gone through was not crazy, that it was an awakening, and that I was a transformed spiritual being. And how do I stay true to that in life? And I didn't. That's the thing. That's why I'm making this video. I did not stay 100% true to my spiritual path. I didn't like the way that it made me feel to be so rejected by people. The ego started coming back, and I started to get resentful towards the people who had rejected me, and maybe a little bit resentful towards God. Like, why would you make me suffer all of these years living in darkness, and then I find my truth, and then it's just more rejection. And it's taken several years to get here, 6.5 years since I had my awakening. And I've been able to find several people now that I can relate to, that they don't think I'm crazy. It's really beautiful. I know they'll never reject me, and they're on their own spiritual path, and they're doing good with the world, spreading love and light. And I knew that I needed to do the same and not hide from being who I am, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you aren't with me, you're against me. And that's okay. If the universe brings people into my life and some of them fall away, well, that's because they're not in alignment with my vibration. So that's the universe doing me a favor and saying, this person doesn't need to be in your life right now. They need to go out and have their own journey. And if they come back, then awesome. They come back. But if they don't, that's okay. They're not supposed to be in my life forever, because every person, every situation, every circumstance that we experience is for our highest good. I am on a spiritual path towards my highest good, and I can't live in fear of what people think of me anymore, especially because I know that there are so many of you out there that want to come out of the spiritual closet too. And it's time. It is time, because we are in such a crucial time in our lives. Like, the world is awakening, and you're seeing it more and more and more. More people are getting into yoga. They're getting into meditation. They're becoming vegan. I'm a vegan. It is so cool that there's so many people just living from a place of unconditional love, and they're serving the world, and they're giving back, and there's so many coaches out there now that are ready to help, and spiritual teachers. And this is the new age right now, and it is time for all of us who have had these powerful awakenings, or who are on the journey to having these powerful awakenings. It is time to get honest with other people. And you know what? If they can't listen to your message, that's okay. We can still plant seeds, and when the time is right, they'll come back and they'll ask questions. It's time to be role models to the people who maybe don't know why they feel so alone, why they feel like they're just going through the motions, or they feel that there's more to life than this, but they don't know what it is, but they try to use external things to fill themselves up to be happy, but at the end of the day, they're not happy. It's time to show them that it's because we're not being truthful, and we're not connecting to our intuitions. We're not trusting the path that God has set before us to go on. I believe that we all have a specific purpose in this life, and my purpose is to serve you. Where are you at on your spiritual journey? How can I assist you in growing further? Have you found your purpose? Have you found your calling? Are you not quite awake yet? Are you starting to have some curiosities about spiritual things? Where are you at? I really want to know. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I could talk about this forever. This is the beginning of the new direction for my YouTube channel. I thank you so much for being here. Again, if this resonates with you, subscribe to my channel, send me a message, find me on my socials. Let me know how I can assist you further. Until then, thank you so much. Light and love.